Raising Unicorns!
Harmon Brothers!
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Raising Unicorns. I have with me, again, Kaitlin Snow.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So today, we're doing a book review.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a book throwdown!
Today, we're doing a book review for this book right here.
Yep. Video Marketing by Jon Mowat. Don't know if I said his last name right.
Mowat. Yeah, I don't know how to say his last name. Mowat.
Sounds a little more forceful.
Rudes. Roads. This was a big book. This is a dense book. This is kind of crazy because he's coming from an agency background. It's like more of I would say a traditional agency, but he has a really forward-thinking kind of approach to creative that feels more modern and contemporary to like the ad buying environment that we're in versus a lot of like people who come out of the traditional agency world. They, I think, in old school media buying terms, I think in TV, like 6-week flights of like broadcast or radio. But like he has a really good handle on this and had a lot of really great use cases of like where this worked really, really well. Here's an example of it where it's done well. Here's work I personally worked on at this agency.
I think that's true about him kind of having a different perspective than just like old school agency, because he talks a lot about like the push versus like the pull.
Yeah.
Like how, usually advertisers are just pushing stuff to people, but he's saying you also have to just have an always on mentality where you can have content that's coming out that like pulls people in, right?
Yeah.
That's engaging people, and it's more than just it. I mean, the brand can literally just be at the end of the video, as long as that like message of whatever they're making aligns with the brand. Like he's like, go for it,
He talks a lot later in the book about like questions to ask yourself before you make your content. And I think it's funny. I don't know if you felt this way, Kaitlin, but there was a lot of stuff that he said in here that were like processes we do use at like Harmon Brothers, but not in like the exact same way and phraseology. Like a lot of the method and process that he talks about for crafting the messaging, crafting the actual like creative itself, like they're all processes that we've kind of organically stumbled into through trial and error, I would say.
Yeah, like one was talking about how like you want your ad to be long enough, but like not a second longer.
Yeah.
Right? And we do that all the time. It's like we're not trying to like make a 3-minute video or a 15-second video. It's like, how much can we like show the customer to make them want it without like boring them or giving them too much information that actually isn't going to like push them to buy, Yeah,
because we always get that question like when we're dealing with new clients. They're always like, oh, you guys seem to have like the formula down, like just like you nailed it. So like what's the perfect length of video? And the answer, it's a dumb answer, like not a dumb answer, but it's like kind of a boring answer if you say it depends. But I think the more interesting and more, I think what we usually say in the office and like around the creative process is make it exactly as long as it needs to be and not a second longer. This is the book, he talks about it like making it so it's exactly as long as it needs to be to convey the message, but don't go any longer than that, because then if you cross over that threshold where it's too long and you're losing people, you've kind of like lost the benefit you had by the good part of your ad that's actually clearly conveying the message, and you're just like, oh, now this ad's too long, this is boring me,
right.
I'm no longer engaged, pass.
Or it's just too much, like it's also just too much information.
Or too much information,
that can be confusing,
Exactly.
And because one of our lines is the confused customer never buys, right?
And I think it's super easy too. Like when we have like products that come to us who are like complicated products or like ones that might take a little bit of education, which are most of the products that come to us because like we give a lot of education in our content. But like it's really easy for especially founders and people who or inventors of the product to be like, let's get into the technical details on this thing, and like they really want to dive into like the nitty gritty
because it's what makes their product unique. But as far as the experience of the customer, some of those things they don't care about.
And like it's like we got to distill it down to like what's the one thing that you want the customers to take away from this, like the one like benefit that they will receive from your product that is different than anything else. And let's build the whole campaign creative around that. And these other ancillary things might be something you do in retargeting things. It might be something you do make content for your website. It might be stuff that they just experience when they get the product and they use it. And it's like a kind of a nice added delight. There's a couple of scripts where it's gotten out of hand here where clients have been like, let's shove this in, let's shove this in, let's shove this in. And I feel like more often than not, we'll test those things and we end up stripping a lot of it down to like the more like refined, very specifically focused on like the one or two things that like really make the product different, that like ends up being the best performing asset.
You know, there's always the studies how like people value something more if it's already theirs. Like the classic example is like, how much would you buy this mug for? It's like 75 cents. And it's like, okay, but it's your mug. How much would you sell it for? And they're like, $5. Yeah. So he's talking about how like with your phone in your hand, like looking at an ad, like, or a product, like you already feel like it's yours more so. And they found that just like there's more sales through, you know, mobile than like on a desktop. And part of that is the psychology of feeling like it's already yours and owning it.
That's such a bizarre like thing.
It's crazy.
And like it makes me like, I'm like, oh man, I don't know. I have like such, it's funny. As the CEO of an advertising agency, I have really weird feelings about like how intrusive like mobile phones are, but like how much our whole business depends on them.
You're like, so I don't want to lobby for more restrict.
I'm not saying that you just target phones because they make people buy crap more, but like maybe do that because it converts better. Well,
I look at my spending habits or buying habits, and I will buy something faster on my phone than I do on my laptop. Like my laptop, I'm like researching something. It's usually like something that I'm taking 2 or 3 months to like, do I really want to buy this? Whereas like I'm buying, you know, like clothes or gifts or like kid things, stuff for school. Like super I'm buying all that stuff fast on my phone. Yeah. So it's interesting how he talks about that. And then kind of a secondary idea, which he didn't go into as much, as like, because the phone, like you're holding it in your hand, it almost feels like yourself, like
an extension of you.
Yeah. So that's like another reason why it's so easy to reach people.
Yeah.
Like on mobile versus like, you know, a billboard or something.
There's a section of the book where he talks about 7 questions you should ask yourself before you start making creative. And this is the part that I thought was the parallel to a lot of the questions that we've kind of internally kind of crafted over the years or through trial and error, realized we should ask ourselves this and adjust for this in the scripting or the brief process to make sure we're on point for our creative and how it comes out in the end. Because that's the worst thing, is when you do it wrong and then you get to the end, you're like, I think we missed the mark. How could we have prevented this?
Yeah.
So I think we got some stopgaps in place, and some of these questions are really good questions to kind of go through to make sure you have your creative crafted in the way that you want to go against the goal you have in mind.
Yeah, and I feel like he really set up this like part of the book really well, because he can show what can be done, the different types of videos. He's talked about the psychology behind it, but it's like now the rubber meets the road, you know, and like this is very like practical like advice that he's giving. And like you're right, there's just so many ways that like you can deviate, and so these questions just kind of help you like
stay on the straight and narrow.
Know what that path is, you know what I mean? Like to decide, okay, what is success and stuff. So and that's literally the first one, was like, it's what are your campaign goals?
The next question is, he says, who are you talking to? Which is a huge thing of like really nailing down who your audience is. Do your research, guys. Do your research. Preach.
Research. And that moves into the next one, was, you know, ask yourself, what are you going to say? Right. And so I think a lot of that is found based on like, again, finding that target audience. You're either testing or you're talking with them. Like you're not asking leading questions, you know, like they say in like, you know, court, like that's a leading question. Like really, I found it's most helpful when it's like, even on like scripts or videos, just asking them, what was the main point? Like, what is this ad?
What did you take away from this?
Yeah, telling you.
In one sentence, yeah.
Okay,
so the next one he says is, where is your audience? This is a really big one. And I would even put this higher up on the order, only because where is your audience? It determines like what kind of platform you're going to be on. Are you going to be on connected TV? Are you going to be on linear? Are you going to be on Facebook? Are you going to be on Instagram? Are you going to be on YouTube or TikTok? Because a lot of this, like, you have to decide the channel, and it dictates a lot of the style for the format, right? Because they're very different. Like YouTube ads are very different from TikTok ads.
And he emphasized that a lot. Like it's like you can't just make one video that's going to like work for all of them. Pick what you want to where you're going to show it, and then make it accordingly. Yeah. When are you talking to your viewers? It's talking about what point of the funnel, right?
Oh, yeah.
Are you talking to your viewer? Like, is this like they've never heard of you before, you know, or have they been considering you, or you like a higher luxury item, they've heard about you for a while, but they kind of need to know like the final like education or details like that way for a push.
Okay, so let's keep going down through these questions. These are really good ones.
Yeah.
So
what's next?
number 6, how will you activate your campaign or broadcast your campaign? So I think this is like, you know, he talks about the different channels and what you can do where it's like paid media, which is obviously like you're going on to YouTube, you're going on to Meta, you're going on to TikTok, like you're actually putting paid ad spend
Google
behind
AdWords,
it. Yep.
yeah.
And then there's like earned, like this is ones that's like, you know, where you're doing it through SEO, where you're putting it out on like organic blog posts can be searched, or like PR, where you're doing a press release and trying to get picked up by publications.
Also just shares.
Oh
right?
yeah, just sharing.
Just shares,
Organic.
or like, yeah, with PR, you know, if it's like the Squatty Potty video was just so absurd and different that like so many people were sharing it.
Yeah.
And then I'm pretty sure there were like, you know, like little news like segments of like the pooping unicorn, you know? Yeah.
And then the last one is your owned channels, which is like, that's like your website, that's like your own Instagram, that's like just like your organic like places you have control over publication, and then the normal traffic coming into those different areas or seeing that organically, you know, coming in that way. Okay, and then the last question, what are your campaign KPIs and metrics? I thought this was interesting because like the I think this is really, we talked about this on the top, like the very first one. I was like, what's the goal of the campaign? I feel like right after that, you should discuss, okay, the goal is to get sales. Okay, it's like, okay, what KPI are we looking at? Are we looking at total sales? Are we looking at tracked sales? Are we looking in like, you know, retail sales? Are we looking on direct to consumer sales?
But they're using it as a bookend of
Yeah.
like after you've decided who
All
you're
these
talking
different
to, what
things.
you're saying,
Yeah.
where you're saying it. Yeah, which is smart because like the KPIs are going to be different if you're like doing a CTV versus, you know, like a TikTok. And what was cool with this book is he talks about like, okay, if you're going to do it internally, like here's the things you need. And if you're going like making the actual ads, and if you're going to do it externally, like here's the things to ask the agency. So like he also like, you know, is kind of speaking to not just marketers, but like people who have products and like who want to obviously have their products marketed. It was like a good kind of guide of like, here's how to talk to an ad agency and to make sure that like they're the right fit for you.
I think the more we talk to people, like the more I talk to people on business development, I think what it comes down to is like having a sound strategy where and how you're going to use the content is like a huge piece, because anybody can, like, not anybody, but like a lot of people can make like a video that gets engagement or that like is very entertaining, but like does it actually work against the objectives you set out, the goals of the campaign, the KPIs? Are we actually driving sales? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of stuff you can miss even if it does have like a high level of engagement and is entertaining, you know. But if you get the strategy and like those kind of core goals like centered around everything like you do creatively and execution wise, then you're going to be fine. This is a great read.
Yeah,
this took me a really
5-star
long time.
review right
5 star.
there.
It's really great. Has a ton of information. I think it's really helpful to understand like both on the mechanics, like a theory level of why video works, as well as like down to like the strategy and mechanics of it. It's a really good book that kind of covers the whole gamut of, you know, why video marketing works in this modern age. I think it's a really great resource for people.
He has summaries too, so it's like even though it is big, like you can kind of take it in sections, and like I always like reading a summary. It's like, oh yeah, that was what I read.
That's right. Capturing all that.
Yeah, and then again, just like lots of examples. So
go check it out. Thanks, Kaitlin, so much. Appreciate your time.
Pew, pew, pew.
Thank you for watching Raising Unicorns!
Subscribe now.